We're talking about Caitlin Clark on this channel once again, and it's not because she's beaten some sporting record or she's dunked or she's been slammed on the ground by a player on the opposing team again. No, she's done something far more interesting, and that is acknowledging her white privilege. Yes, she's finally spoken up about the elephant in the room, which is her whiteness. It is the reason she is where she is today, I guess.
The golden girl of basketball just revealed something shocking that divided the time of Caitlin Clark in America. Fans were stunned by the interview when she acknowledged possessing white privilege. Battle lines were blown up by the internet. Drawn, but Amala Ekpunobi intervened too. Now that you were defending Clark, chaos broke out. The biggest star in the NBA finds herself between politics and merit. She coerced herself into making this admission. You will be shocked by the truth.
She says, quote, "I want to say I've earned every single thing. But as a white person, there is privilege. A lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been black players. This league has kind of been built on them," which is a very interesting choice of phrasing there. We'll get to that in a moment. The more we can appreciate that, highlight that, talk about that, and then continue to have brands and companies invest in those players that have made this league incredible, I think it's very important. I have to continue to try to change that.
Let's discuss a storm. It has been simmering in the world of sports. And I assure you that this one is larger than any. Caitlin Clark's game-winning shot, the phenomena that has been transforming women's basketball, recently made a remark that has all of the sports, two social media warriors, and experts up in arms. And by everyone, I mean everyone. Everything blew up when Clark carried out what appeared to be a routine Time magazine interview, the kind of athlete who receives prominent talks regarding their journey, perhaps sharing some flashes of inspiration. But Clark entered a different course, and that is the true beginning of our narrative. Here is exactly what she said. "Wish to declare that I've earned each and every item, but as a white individual, there is advantage for many of the participants in the league that has performed exceptionally well. This league has some black players been constructed upon them, so let those words take a moment to register, because they have caused a conflagration that no one can escape." Noticed Amala Ekpunobi approaching and took a step into this dispute with some significant questions that were necessary, and allow me to tell you that she didn't initially hold back. Amala mentioned that the WNBA is 67%. In this league, black is correct. Clark is discussing the fact that she's in minority, but it's only the starting point on why this entire problem is. I'm aware that it's fascinating.
It's interesting that she says the league is built on them rather than like built with them, or they've contributed so much to the league. They are essentially the league. If we look at the WNBA in particular, I think we have a 67% black makeup of the league. For the NBA, it's like 70%. So we're talking about a predominantly black female league with the WNBA, but somehow Caitlin Clark is exercising some kind of white privilege within the league, even though she is in the minority.
And let's go back a little and take a look at what Clark has accomplished for the WNBA prior to joining the league. Was having trouble, to put it mildly. The games were politely down in terms of viewership, performed in smaller settings, and it was operating on the WNBA's fumes. Gained greater recognition for its political remarks as opposed to basketball itself. And nobody was benefiting from that. Then Clark arrives and everything. We're not referring to minor adjustments. We're discussing seismic shifts here. All of a sudden, they must switch games to NBA venues due to the increased demand. Brand deals begin to come in. We're talking about millions of people at Niagara Falls. Dollars that were previously absent, and the worst part is that this money isn't only helping Clark and her teammates. Regardless of race, they are currently in the air. The league as a whole is witnessing a degree of publicity and income that was unthinkable only a year prior. So when Clark discusses privilege, which you must, what privilege? Precisely because if we observe her, the trip has been anything but. She is fortunate, but she didn't get there. She got there because of the hue of her skin, by being utterly outstanding at what she does, and we're discussing someone who has repeatedly broken records, able to withstand pressure that would crush most athletes, and who has demonstrated her abilities in only once she enters the court. But something more profound is happening here. Thus, it's worthwhile to explore the WNBA's a complex past involving identity, politics prior to Clark's arrival. The league made a lot of political statements with messages of social justice, and while these are crucial discussions too, have they been obscuring the real? Fans of sports were not disinterested because they disagreed with the messaging, but due of their desire to watch basketball. What distinguished Clark, and this is, most importantly, she simply played basketball without statements or politics. She allowed it to be just pure athletic excellence. Ironically, her game does the talking. By only concentrating on basketball, she ultimately contributed more to the league and its participants over any political declaration may have been accomplished by considering when was the last time she had an impact. You've seen this level of enthusiasm regarding when was the last time women's basketball, when you encountered folks who had never watched a WNBA game abruptly turning into a diehard. Clark did that, fans not by discussing privilege or identity but by just being remarkably skilled at what she does. Amala provided a fascinating analogy that truly resonates with her. She compared Eminem and Clark's relationship in hip-hop. A white person who is successful in a mostly black space, there's frequently this implicit demand to recognize, honor, or show consideration for the community even after you achieve success. From sheer skill and diligence, it's similar to you must pay this invisible tax, compensation for achieving success, while white in. Let's examine a few spaces. Specific figures here, since Clark didn't enter the league, ticket sales just grew. They've blown up, and we're discussing how venues are selling out in. TV ratings for minutes have soared. Engagement on social media is exploding records, and once more, this isn't taking place. It's happening because Clark is white, due to the fact that she excels in basketball. The most intriguing aspect about it all, this is how other players are being impacted. In the league, keep in mind that the WNBA is primarily black, and these athletes are greatly profiting from what individuals are referring to the Clark effect more frequently. Viewers indicate greater interest from sponsors. More money results from sponsor interest. Bringing in additional money for the league means improved circumstances for every player, irrespective of their race. But with Clark's assertion on his privilege, started a completely new discussion, and you must ask yourself, was this something she was there or truly wanted to speak? Pressured to say things like this, because this is where privilege comes into play. If you must disclose it to others, let's examine if privilege is indeed a privilege. What Clark has truly contributed to the table she's been more visible for. Women's basketball in general. She has attracted new admirers who never would have otherwise watched the WNBA. She has drawn well-known sponsors who are presently funding the league as a whole, and possibly most significantly, she has demonstrated that basketball for women may be equally fascinating and profitable as the irony in men's basketball is that by stating this regarding privilege, in fact, Clark may be undermining her own accomplishments. She's basically implying that a portion of her achievement isn't because of her extraordinary talent, moral character, and commitment to the game, and not only is that unjust to her, but it's congratulations to each and every league player, regardless of their ethnicity. Consider this gives young athletes a message. If, since you're prosperous and white, do you need should express regret if you're black, and is your talent the reason you're successful? Or because you contributed to the creation of the league? These are difficult problems that lack simple solutions, but we must inquire as to what's. The timing is especially intriguing. Considering everything, Clark said these things just when she's at her best. She's providing unparalleled influence. The breaking of women's basketball looking at documents and generally transforming the sport, and rather than concentrating on the amazing accomplishment. We are currently discussing privilege. In actuality, Clark's achievements have not related to privilege, and she has nothing to do with merit. Attracting notice due to her whiteness. She's receiving notice as a result of remarkable at what she does, yet she's not. Because of her race, she's packing arenas, filling them since she performs basketball at a level where players can wish to view now that we've parted ways. What transpired, let's discuss. What the entire issue actually entails for women's basketball's future and general sports because, believe me, goes well beyond a single player's remarks on privilege. First, let's talk about the issue that has to be addressed. Response from other participants in the. Thus, you might assume Clark's remarks on recognizing privilege and providing giving Black players credit would be beneficial. Received quite nicely, and it's been unexpectedly, some veterans of the league has been noticeably silent. Others, however, have resisted. In contrast to the story, here's incredibly fascinating. Several of Clark's Black and white teammates appear to nearly uneasy with the entire discussion on why, as they've been observing closely her work ethic, they've seen how many hours she spends practicing, the commitment to honing her craft, the mental fortitude required to execute, pressed, and none of that has. Let's speak about anything related to race, regarding certain figures that no one appears to wish to talk about. Prior to joining the Indiana Fever, Clark, the average attendance for the team was now averaging over 4,000 spectators per game. Arenas with 177,000 seats are sold out. Sales of items have risen by more than. TV ratings of 400% have shattered earlier records. This is beneficial for more than only Clark. It benefits each and every participant in the league, but this is where it gets. Some of the most fascinating critics include genuinely attempting to utilize these numbers against her, implying that in some ways her fame is evidence of her privilege. Consider how archaic that. Using logic, we're essentially stating that being exceptionally skilled at something and attracting a large number of supporters is currently a kind. Is that truly the message of privilege? Let's get started. We want to send. Amala brought up a topic that truly brings to light the WNBA struggles with identity politics. Before Clark arrived, they were totally absorbed in creating political declarations they failed to remember. Their main responsibility is to entertain basketball supporters. When Clark arrived and just concentrated on playing fantastically, she didn't just bring in basketball new admirers, she demonstrated to everyone what the league might be like. This quotation from A. that truly encapsulates it. A season ticket holder. I began to watch due to Clark's highlights, but I've come to love the entire league. I found a lot of incredible athletes I was unaware of. Prior to this, Clark's true influence. She's more than just a famous athlete. She's a entryway to valuing women's basketball overall. But now we have this discussion about privilege is clouding the seas, which causes some people to really crucial queries at the beginning, blaming privilege for achievement instead. What message does that convey compared to merit? Are we telling young athletes this? That their efforts are not as important as their race, that their accomplishments require? As a disclaimer, let's have a conversation regarding the role of the media in all of this. They've been enjoying themselves immensely with Clark's remarks, but many are absent. Their intense attention on the larger picture, the aspect of privilege that they're disregarding the actual narrative of how one player's a whole sport has been elevated by excellence. We can't just leave someone alone, it seems fantastic, no longer without transforming it into a sociological case study, as well as discussing. Let's address the double standard in the media. When Black athletes are dominant in, we honor their sports. No one asks for excellence as we should. LeBron James will recognize his athletic abilities. No one begs Serena Williams for privilege. I'm sorry for being so domineering, but why are we're burdening Clark with this? And further element that requires discussion is the impact on the economy. Since Clark entered the league's sponsorship agreements have grown, generally not only for her but for additional participants as well as businesses that never gave the WNBA a second glance are now waiting to participate, which isn't the power that comes with having privilege, competent in your field that others can't disregard you. The more seasoned players in the league are recognizing opportunities that primetime games have never been more prevalent, improved travel circumstances, and a rise in media. Greater coverage, better attendance. Merchandising deals were the source of all of this, regarding not due to any advantage but due to the fact that one player was so outstanding that she forced others to focus on the whole league. Let's now discuss the future, as that's actually what the WNBA is at a crossroads in this regard. They can either seize this opportunity to development and concentration on the basketball, or they may become mired in their identities. Clark's remarks on politics, once more, regretfully, it could push things in the incorrect way. Consider the players of the future generation observing all. What are they learning as this unfolds? If they are successful, they will require to express regret for the fact that their accomplishments will always be evaluated through a racial perspective instead of the message of any sport is not one of merit. Ought to send this is what we ought to be discussing Clark's work instead. Considering her basketball IQ, she's changed the women's game. The truth that she's creating individuals who have never seen women's basketball develop into devoted supporters. These are the things that will matter. Motivate the next generation by becoming. For a second, the WNBA really needs more. In particular, Caitlin Clark's is not white players, but those who are so talented that it's fascinating to observe how they surpass demography and attract fresh admirers to the players of video games who help you forget about everything but the extraordinary sports taking place on the court, and which leads us to the core of what Amala is saying this to support Clark. Sports ought to be the most important. The meritocracy doesn't care what you appear like, your origins, or whatever. What matters is your background. You can perform on the track or court. When we shift our attention to anything else, we lessen the very element that makes special in sports. So where do we go? Here, the WNBA's court is where the balls are, so to speak, they can either take advantage of this time to refocus on the important things, the extraordinary athleticism and talent of either their athletes, or they can allow identity. Once more, politics takes precedence over the game. Their decision will probably determine Clark Shell's future in the league. Continue playing what she does best, playing basketball at the highest level, and that's genuinely the only thing someone should ask for. She doesn't make claims about privilege. Recognition of the people who constructed what basketball that is really amazing, since that ultimately that's what sports are all about, are meant to focus on things other than color of your skin rather than your origins. Your advantage, or lack thereof, is just your capacity to function when it's important to put forth more effort than everyone else and to motivate others with your superiority, and Clark has been acting in that exact manner. What do you do if everything else is simply noise? You believe identity politics are no longer relevant. Far in athletics, or was Clark justified in? Recognize her privilege and take your ideas in the remarks section below. Remember to hit the like button and click subscribe for more intense content. Commentary about sports also rings that bell notification to remain informed about the. See you in the latest sporting controversies. The following video